Hello everybody, we have kind of a weird video here that I wanted to talk about today, and that is about the two conferences and whether or not the Western Conference is weak. Now before we start, I wanted to say please make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new to me, new to hockey, whatever the case may be. I'd love to have you here along the way as I try to do this as a career. Now let's get into this. And I did also want to mention this is going to be one of those videos that I don't think will take a lot of flack because I don't think one fan base or one fan, whatever the case may be, are not going to be a big, conference person. They're not going to say, oh, I absolutely ride or die with one conference. I think most people have their teams that they like, and then they have some preferences. I don't really think it comes down to this, where it's extreme one conference bias, but we'll see. And we're going to talk about whether or not the West is actually weaker. But starting off, we will just put this up. This is the top 6 teams in the East. Of course, this is a very stacked group as you have so many good squads. You have, of course, Boston being the best team in the league, Carolina Hurricanes, New Jersey Devils, Toronto Maple Leafs, Tampa Bay Lightning, and the New York Rangers. Multiple of these clubs made big moves going into the trade deadline period, and some of it was bigger than others. Of course, the Rangers looked like that club that made the most noise. Toronto made some noise. New Jersey, of course, made a lot of noise getting Timo Meier, etc. Carolina kind of laid quiet, but these are clubs that have aspirations, not only of going to the playoffs, but going on deep runs. And realistically, I'd say almost all these clubs should have Stanley Cup aspirations. New Jersey, it's a little bit more tough to say considering they are younger and they don't have the playoff experience. Some teams do with some of their core guys. But again, I'm also looking at New Jersey, and I say for any team that is this good, they surely are not thinking, we could set our sights a little bit lower. No, they're probably thinking Cup as well. However, I think one thing that's come out, especially during the trade deadline period, is the talk that the Eastern Conference is a beast to the East. And that has been a talking point for not only other people, but for myself. I say it as a joke, but it's partially true. These Eastern Conference teams are very, very good, and they are not to be reckoned with. They are teams that you don't really want to meet in the playoffs, and that's the reality of the situation. But I've also seen memes come out about the Western Conference. So I wanted to talk about the Western Conference and if I actually think it's a joke. So here you go. Here is the current, I say this because I'm recording this Thursday night, so this will go out probably Friday, but this is the current standings here for the Western Conference 1 through 6. You have the Vegas Golden Knights, Los Angeles Kings, Dallas Stars, Minnesota Wild, Seattle Kraken, and Edmonton Oilers. I'm going to talk a little bit about all these teams and then kind of give my take at the end here. And so we're kicking it off with Vegas. Vegas is, of course, the best team in the West right now, a club that has had to deal with some injuries, but they've weathered the storm and are a club that has not been afraid to make moves in their very short history and also try to make this push for the Cup. They have not made it to the Stanley Cup Final since 2018, their inaugural season. This is a club that is like top 5 in the league right now for points and where they stand. This is a club you have to take serious. Absolutely, this is not a weak or soft team. As for the second team, Los Angeles Kings team, this is a club that's kind of interesting too because the Kings kind of came up now last year, I should say, and had a really good year. People were wondering if they'd replicate it. I myself was pretty skeptical about them having a 100-plus season. Here they are, though. They're surging. They have 82 points in 65 games played. If they can lock up the 2 seed out west, they are able to show that last year wasn't a fluke. And LA was one of those teams that even when they were bad, they had a lot of good underlying metrics. For the Kings, this is, again, another team. Maybe it's not as flashy as some other teams. Maybe some of their players aren't as flashy as other teams, but not a team that I'd love to play. I know they've had some issues, especially with goaltending. They've had to play around with that this season as well. But Los Angeles is a good team, and they are, again, not a bad team. Dallas. This is one of those teams, too, that is very weird. I projected them to be kind of like a fringe wildcard team or a wildcard team, maybe snag a 3 seed in their division. And later in this year, they've been able to hold the top spot in the Western Conference. Jason Robertson's good. Ropa Hintz is good. We know all this. Jake Oettinger doing his thing. Dallas is a club that I do worry a little bit about going forward, but I know they've got some prospects they're excited about, and they're also a club that showed when a better side like Calgary played them last year, thanks to Jake Oettinger, kind of, you would definitely say there, they were still able to compete in that series. Dallas, not a fluke team. Minnesota, this is I don't know what to say about Minnesota. I think a lot of this relies on if Kirill Kaprizov's healthy. They're still a good squad, but he is an offensive facilitator, and we just know what he's able to do in his short time with the league. Minnesota, a team, again, I think they could go on a run, but I also am a little bit more skeptical about like Dallas. Goaltending will probably be a big talking point here to see if they could have some, hot goaltending in the postseason stretch. Minnesota, just like Dallas, I'd say not a team to be taken lightly. Maybe not in that tier like Vegas, but a club you have to reckon with, which leaves Seattle and Edmonton. Seattle. This is a weird one because, again, another team that I said would be better, but I wasn't sure if they were going to make the playoffs. They are hitting their stride right now. They had a lot of good offseason pickups. I look at this club and I say this one is a sleeper team. They might not be perfect. They might not have the best roster in the league, but it's still a good roster. And this is a club that I'm going to put kind of in that Minnesota-Dallas category, and not the team that you would expect to go on and win the cup, but if they did, you'd figure they got hot at the right time, and they do have a future that I'm pretty excited about. And I would say don't, overlook them in the playoffs, especially if your team's in the Western Conference side. Make sure not to overlook them, because I would hate for you to be surprised if you got upset by Seattle. As for the sixth side, you have the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton, are you going to get hot soup or cold soup? I don't know. Is this team going to be a side that is on another run like last year? They went to the conference final. They have, two of the best players in the world in Connor McDavid, which is, I don't even know what to say about him. I've done enough videos for you to know he's good. Everybody's done enough to say that he's good. But at this point, you know that he is single-handedly good enough to win a playoff series for his team. Leon Draisaitl as well. Kind of grouping them in here, with some of these other teams that I talked about, Seattle, Minnesota, etc. A club that I would say could go on a run, and I wouldn't want you to overlook them, but I don't expect them to go on a deep run. Having said all this, what exactly do I think of the Western Conference, and do I think that they are weak? It's kind of a video I just threw together, but I like talking about this. I think that for the Western Conference, they are a little bit deeper than people realize, and I think they're deeper than the Eastern Conference, where their Eastern Conference is definitely not bad, but there's a little bit of a fall off to where you see some fringe teams that are getting hot late, that are trying to make a push, whereas the West has a lot of clubs, especially in the Pacific Division, that are really pushing hard. You have no idea who's going to win that title there and who's probably going to claim the top spot out West. But again, you have another team in Colorado that is going to be making the postseason here, more likely making the postseason. They're going to be hot. If they're healthy too, a club that just won a championship, look out for them. I am going to say that the West is not weak. I bet you probably expected me to say that. Having said that, I do think looking at this conference, I see fewer teams that I would expect to be there to challenge and beat some of those Eastern Conference teams. Right now, yes, the East has those teams that you would expect, or more teams to go on these Stanley Cup-esque runs. But what I will say is this: we have seen bad teams before go on pretty hot runs in the playoffs. Just look at the 2021 Montreal Canadiens. That was a club that had no business at all being in the Stanley Cup final, and yet they went down and they knocked out Toronto in the first round. Kind of a weird series there. They beat Winnipeg. I think it was a sweep, might have been, I can't remember. And then they took down Vegas. Vegas was a club that everybody said that Montreal was going to just sweep, or that not Montreal, but Vegas was going to wipe the floor with them. They did, and they were able to go on and lose in the Stanley Cup final, but they still made it. And looking at 7 of these teams here, they are much better than that club from a few years ago, and I am expecting some good times here. I'm really excited to see how the regular season finishes out at West, especially, like I said, that Pacific Division. They're all just so close together right now, and I'm looking forward to see who can win that, because that is going to be a big part of playoff seeding and playoff matchups. But we will see. Do you think that the West is a weak conference? Do you think that it's within striking range of the Eastern Conference? And who do you see as some of these clubs that are definitely good shots at winning the Cup out West? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.